Welcome back to another round of We Know Severance here on RHAP. We know scripted TV. We know severance.com. That's the URL that you want to hit up if you want to make sure to subscribe to the podcast, never miss an episode here as we are getting close to the end of the line here on Severance Season 2. Just a few more episodes left here. We are talking about episode 7. If you wanted to know what was going on the testing floor, I still don't know if we totally know what's going on the testing floor, but we got to see a lot more of the testing floor. We got to see a lot more of Gemma and several other versions of Gemma. Big episode for Deacon Lockman returning to the show in a major way this week. Very excited to dig into it all with two podcasters who always make it feel like it's Christmas every day when I step into the podcast booth. Doctors Amanda and Melissa. Merry Christmas, Amanda.
Yeah, this was maybe it's not a good idea for it to be Christmas every day. That's a lot of thank you. First of all, you don't have to write your thank you cards on Christmas.
What are we doing, right?
And
why are we doing that on Christmas?
We would never do it on Christmas. And I would argue you do not send thank you cards on Christmas because you send thank you cards when people are just giving gifts to you in like a unilateral exchange of it's my birthday, it's my wedding, it's my baby shower, it's a me thing. But Christmas, presumably, they also gave these people gifts.
And can I also say, like, the modern day version of this is friends of mine had a baby a little while ago. I, sent them some gifts. And so I got sent like a little cute video of baby wearing the gift that I sent. And just like hey, we're doing good. Here, I hope you're doing good. Text message, like quick, done, easy. Did not require.
Are we still doing these handwritten?
No, we're not. We're really not.
No, people
millennials
do this.
Ruined the thank you card.
People still do this. I guarantee you that there are conscientious millennials and even, dare I say, conscientious Gen Zers who are writing thank you notes and ruining it for all of us.
Yeah.
Because every now and then I get a beautiful handwritten note from somebody and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm a terrible person. I never would do this. I would never do this.
I would never do it. If either of you or anybody, frankly, listening to this ever gets a handwritten note from me, that's like that, like, okay, he's been taken, like sort of like red flag. Like it wasn't me.
You're on the testing floor.
Yes, I'm on the testing floor.
I love a card. Like I love a chance to like tell people that I think they're great in written form and a thing that they can hold on to. But again, it's not like a unilateral thing. It's like hey, here's a Christmas card, here's a birthday card. There's no like there's no expectation of like reciprocation on that, but it is just like hey, here's a chance for me to say something nice about you, but not, I don't know. Thank you cards just feel so like obligatory and gross, and I don't like it.
Whatever the opposite of season's greetings is to this douchebag doctor, Dr. Maurer. Do we have a name?
Yeah,
Dr. Maurer.
Yeah, I turned on the closed captioning just to get that, but yeah.
This Dr. Maurer, master of disguise, this Dr. Maurer,
right?
Who's going to be doing a lot of prop comedy throughout this. Very interested to break down how are we able to re-simulate turbulence on the testing floor of Lumen. He's a dentist. He's a flight attendant. What a multi-hyphenate this Dr. Maurer. And on top of all of those things, he's also just a creepy douche. So we'll talk about him. We will talk about Mark, who remains alive, but is sort of tripping through his memories in this episode to some extent. And of course, Gemma is still alive, but multiple versions of Gemma seem to exist. We'll break it all down. You're all going to have theories and feedback about this as well. Send it in, severancerhap@gmail.com. My humblest apologies. I would write a sorry letter to each and every single one of you for not delivering a theories and feedback episode this week. Totally my bad. But because I don't believe in them, I won't actually be writing you any of those letters. And you could just forward all of your hate mail to severancerhap@gmail.com alongside your theories and feedback for this episode of Severance. So how are we feeling?
I think for the for the complaints, you can send that to like Severance RHAP at AOL.com or
Yeah,
something. And we'll
Severance
totally get them. We'll
RHAP.
absolutely read them. I promise you.
It's
They
actually
come right to us.
RHAP. Yeah.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
hotmail.com.
Hotmail.gov.
We've wanted to know more about the testing floor, Dr. Amanda. We've wanted to know what's going on with Gemma. Do we feel like we got what we wanted? Do you feel like you have more answers than you had coming into this week? Or do you feel sort of like I do, even more mystified?
Ooh, well, yeah, this was definitely a thing apart from in terms of a departure from our typical Severance fare, a little bit of an oops all Gemma episode of Severance. I'm still sort of processing how I feel about this episode. I think I'm looking forward to coming back for our feedback show later this week. One, because I know people are going to have a lot of feedback and theories because there's a lot of fodder for one of the big questions of Severance, which is what the heck is MDR doing?
Correct. Yes.
We have a lot more information to put into the theory mill with regards to that.
Can't believe those screens are a two-way mirror. Classic cop shit. We should have known.
Classic. But I think that one of the things that we've been experiencing in this season of Severance is playing with the format of what we expect a typical Severance episode to be, which throughout all of season 1, and for the most part, in many episodes of season 2, we get an episode that's, almost evenly divided between seeing what's going on the severed floor of Lumen and what's going on in the outside world. And there's a rhythm to that we as fans have come to expect and look forward to. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna get some of my like innie Dylan, and I'm gonna have my banter between Helly and Mark, and I'm gonna get Milchek doing something weird, and then I'm gonna go out and Rickon's gonna say something funny, and Mark is gonna be really moody. So I mean, this season we've had the first 2 episodes which were entirely inside Lumen and entirely outside Lumen, right? We had the mirror image episodes. And then we also had the Ortbo episode, which was a thing apart very much entirely in the outdoor retreat something experience, whatever. But we've had these we've had a lot of variety this season, so it's a little bit hard to get into a Severance groove. I'm finding myself feeling that. But I have to say, like, I thought that this episode was really refreshing. I thought that Deacon Lockman's performance was great. I love Gemma now. I'm like, Helly who? Like, I love Gemma. I love Gemma. She's amazing. I want to marry Gemma. I definitely want, cute Adam Scott with the better haircut to be back together with Gemma. And there was something that felt like a little bit of a return to form, maybe in a way, and also a relief this episode, because the outside world in which Gemma and Mark were married feels like a lot more like a real place than, frankly, like the town of Kier, PE, and the world of Severance has
oddly
been
so, I think, actually.
really kind of like spiraling into a really bizarre kind of territory that doesn't feel as recognizable as our world. So it was a great relief to meet Gemma, to see an outside world that felt like, okay, there is some core, some center of gravity to the characters in this show that we can relate to. That felt like a relief. And we kind of got that split again between like normal stuff happening on the outside and really weird puzzle stuff happening on the inside. And I was very, very compelled by following Gemma's journey through all of that.
Yeah. Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was really, really great. And I think part of it is that I think we were, and it was sort of funny. I was sort of like reassuring people that I know that are watching the show who are feeling a bit like, man, I really don't know what's going on and we're not getting any answers and whatever. And I was like, but I feel like Severance knows exactly the point to take that and then be like, okay, here's some answers. Like here, and those answers are going to raise more questions. And I feel like this episode did that, right? Like we have now seen for sure that Gemma is still alive. We've seen some of what is happening to her down on the testing floor. Do we understand any of it? Probably not, but we
We'll
have
try.
whole new things. Yeah, we have whole new things to theorize about, and I think we have some answers to things, some clues that have pointed us in directions that we sort of speculated on in terms of like the IVF and like that potentially being related to Lumen. I think that there's some really interesting stuff now. Like there's new meaty things that we can dive into because they gave us some new bits of information. And so instead of this all just feeling like the fallout of last season, which so much of this season has had to be, as like friend of the podcast Ben talked about on our last feedback pod, I think that this has been such a great chance to kind of start answering those questions, and in the perfect Severance way, where those answers only give us new questions to speculate on. So
Ain't
yeah, I
that how
loved
it
it.
always
It was
goes?
so, yeah, it was so different. Also, yeah, Mark and Gemma are adorable, and
They're
I like
cute. They're
absolutely.
cute.
My God,
Couple goals.
They
yeah.
cute. All right. Well, there's a lot to sink our teeth into, and if we get too much in our teeth, we can just go back to the dentist. It's just in the
Ugh.
Wellington room. So don't you worry about that. Let's
Yikes.
dig in to the Chikai Bardo. Am I saying
Yeah.
that right?
I
Chikai?
think so. Yeah, I took a so Reddit has already like pounced all over this, right? Because the
No
name of the
surprise.
episode was available. And so the information that I got about this, I thought was very cool. So Chikai Bardo is a Buddhist term for the fourth of 6 bardos, so stages or intermediate states that a soul experiences, 3 in life and 3 in death. This bardo is the first of death, experienced immediately after physically dying, when the consciousness separates from the body. This is when one either sees the clear light of reality and merges with this light to achieve enlightenment, liberation, and escape from the cycle of rebirth, or due to fear or attachment, fails to recognize it and continues to go through other further states of dying. This is a stage in which rituals and prayers to the dying or dead help to guide them through towards the light. The next ones, the Chanyid Bardo, follows where one encounters visions and karmic projections of one's past actions, thoughts, and desires, embodied as peaceful and wrathful deities that test your mental fortitude and ability to dispel illusion. You are judged by a lord of death and hallucinate hell, monsters, and violence. One's deeds are weighed, but every stage is really all an internal struggle and test of self. Followed finally by the Sidpa Bardo is the last possible end to the cycle. If they continue to be unable to recognize the illusion, they will seek reincarnation in a new vessel, being pushed and pulled to what their next existence should be, continuing the karmic cycle to the first Bardo of birth and life.
Wow.
So I thought, I was like, man, not only is that first one, yeah, like so much of this just feels like metaphors for Severance and what we're seeing. So I thought it was super, super interesting.
And I think very compelling to me that this is being introduced, this sort of this really spiritual concept, titling this episode what Gemma's going to talk about, of like confronting ego death, the death of the self, which I know, Amanda, we're talking about on our respective White Lotus podcasts.
Yes.
The death of the self. Nothing comes from nothing. But here, this is coming after last week's episode, where we kind of introduced the idea of religion into Severance for the first time. So we're getting a little spiritual here in season 2.
Well, very much. I mean, and we definitely have talked about how there is an extreme religiosity to the philosophies of Keir, that this is something, you mentioned reincarnation, Melissa, in your explanation of the title of the episode. There's a revolving. We know that's a concept that's somewhere in the mythology of Severance. So very, very spiritual. Gemma seems to be in some kind of in-between place. We can talk more about that there will be an end after which she will go somewhere else, but maybe not back to Mark, back to the outside world. So very, very interested to hear what people think as we get more into this.
So
yeah, and I think Mark is also in that transitional state,
Yes.
right? And so I think it's really interesting that this can apply to like multiple characters. And yeah, this is sort of
most of them probably, if you think about it, like even Harmony Cobell seems to be in some measure of transition, right?
Can I say, I know we have to get into our like beat by beat of the episode, but when Devin said, I'm going to call Harmony
I
Cobell,
know.
and then she didn't, I was so, Ragabi is like, no, if you do that, I'm going to leave. And I said, if you don't do that, Devin, I'm going to leave.
Then I'm going to
Yeah.
leave.
I demand, what do we want? More Harmony Cobell. When do we want it? Now.
Yeah.
Or
I was going to say 3 episodes ago.
3 episodes ago.
Immediately next week, first scene, please.
Don't tease me like that, Devin. Do not tease me like that.
Gotta pick up.
I know. I thought of you right away. I was like, Amanda's going to be so mad that this doesn't happen in this episode.
Yes, call her.
Call her. Okay, let's do the beat by beat. And when we begin the episode, we begin in the past. We get to see Mark and Gemma's meet cute. Who hasn't met the love of their life while draining blood from their bodies?
I think those are 2 different scenarios. So I think Gemma on the testing floor is having like a blood draw, which by the way, hardest thing I've had to watch on this show so far. Give me brain surgery every day. Before you do. I can't do blood donation. I can't do IVs. Like I absolutely, I fainted multiple times. And so this is
thing that you have in common with my father, in addition to being a scientist.
Lovely. Yeah. This I was watching through my fingers, but yeah.
There's 2 blood draws. And the first blood draw we see is Mark and Gemma as faculty member at Gans College. Gemma is reading themes of religious conversion in Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich. So themes of religious conversion. We've been talking a lot about religion. Mark is reading All Quiet on the Western Blood.
Hell yeah. Light him up. Light him up, Mark.
So funny.
But this is their meet cute, and it's around giving blood. And we've like speculated a lot about why are Mark and Gemma special in the show. They clearly are. We've theorized that Gans College had some connection. We have to imagine that this blood draw, like Lumen has their sticky palms on everything, is this blood draw some subterfuge, some like way to actually get genetic material from people because they're tracking individuals to be used for future psychological human experiments. I think that is very much on the board. And I also feel like what this episode has done is set the groundwork for why Mark and Gemma would be special in a circumstantial way, but not necessarily special because like Mark is Neo, which I think is something that I like very much. Like he's not a messiah, but there were these circumstances that made Mark and Gemma like excellent targets for whatever Lumen is doing.
Yeah.
I also loved the "Who are you?" being one of the first things that Mark says to Gemma.
Yeah, who are you? And like with a totally different tone.
Yeah.
So they do this very weird handshake because they're like matching hands can't quite connect given the blood draw.
I can't believe I missed that detail because I was so like, yeah, I can't watch. That's so funny.
It was cute. But then we go down to the testing floor where Gemma is. This is where she lives. She's giving blood once again, and this time, like all of the joy, all of the life that existed within this woman is so muted right now, as we'll come to understand a bit more why throughout the episode. But we go back from there to, as this episode is going to do, we're going to be bouncing around from place to place and time to time as like Mark and Gemma. Like I kind of read this as like the 2 of them sort of almost like dreaming of each other. I think is sort of sort of like the emotional sense that I get from it at the very least. But Mark is like he's dead asleep on the couch, thankfully not dead on the couch. And Devin is going to find out from Ragabi that what's going on is Mark is reintegrating. He has made this choice that he is going to pursue reintegration, but Devin is now pulling rank as the eldest sibling, on the scene. She is going to stop this from happening. No more reintegration. I throw you off an effing bridge if you ever fuck with him again. That's settled law. Deal with it, Devin says.
I love this. Like, I can tell you're smarter than me, but also absolutely not. This is my brother.
Correct.
And I love protective big sister Devin. It speaks deep into my soul as another eldest sister. And I just, yeah, I thought this was so interesting. But yeah, all of the acting of like Deacon Lockman in particular, but also Adam Scott in this episode is so incredible at communicating all of the emotional weight of everything that happens in this episode and like the differences in time. Like you instantly know what time you're watching them at, not just because of Adam Scott's haircut, but like it's
And
you
his
can
cute
tell.
beard.
So cute.
Yeah. But the other thing that I have to shout out about this episode, I want this episode to like win awards for cinematography. Like just every
The lighting is
incredible
beautiful.
transition. Yeah, all of the times that we like Deacon Lockman's face doesn't move, but just like it changes and you know that it's a different time. And like they do that so many times in this episode.
Yeah.
It's so
And
beautiful.
yeah, it's I'm so glad you mentioned that, Melissa, because it's so beautifully filmed. It's also so different from what we're used to in Severance in terms of the lighting, the sense of space, the expansiveness, the softness of the tone. It doesn't totally feel like, am I watching the right show?
Yes.
But it does have such a distinctly different tone.
Yes, with good reason. The director of this episode, it's not Ben Stiller, but it is a frequent Ben Stiller collaborator and somebody who has already done a ton of work on Severance. Cinematographer Jessica Lee Gagne, who also had previously worked
very cool
with Stiller on Escape at Dannemora, and here is getting like the full scale director bump. So like
Awesome.
a really cool opportunity that is clearly translating. I think the fact that both of you are pulling on this like sort of like dreamscapey vibe that is so pervasive throughout the episode. No coincidence that it's coming from someone with such an eye for this stuff. So really an incredible job on her part.
And I think it does such a great job of exemplifying the difference between these two worlds, right? Like, first of all, the world that Mark and Gemma had before Lumen was like involved in their lives at all, right? And how beautiful and like you said, like soft tones and this kind of like almost like sepia filter type vibe to it sometimes. But then also the like stark contrast of the testing floor and how like sharp and just much less warm this whole environment is. I just like for me there was so much incredible narrative stuff and amazing acting, but also just this episode is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And look at the difference between the home that Mark and Gemma lived in together and what Mark's home is like now.
I thought of that too. All the plants,
in his
the
Lumen,
books,
there's
the comfy seating.
It's filled with books, it's filled with plants, it has things on the wall. It's like a place where people are living and relishing life, whereas Mark's Lumen housing is so stark, like nothing on the wall, always dark, always poorly lit. The windows aren't open. The only thing we have are those weird fish that I think kill each other if they're in the same tank together. Yeah. So like, again, just sort of showing that this was a man whose life was like very full and now his life is very kind of empty and cold.
Well, that's a question that the nurse is going to ask Gemma when we return to the testing floor after Rabi tells Devin that Gemma's alive, confirms for her, like she's alive. And Devin is like brought to her knees by that. We go to the testing floor and the nurse asks Gemma, have you eaten today? She's eaten. Have you done your reading? Yeah, I read 50 pages. Your calisthenics? They're measuring her. There's some sort of there's like an eye exam, which I had to take earlier this week, actually. I didn't decode anything from the alphanumeric eye exam, but the one that's right next to it, it's all goats. There's like one that's just
Really?
just like E all the way down to the bottom. Like I think I wrote down the actual I tried. It was E on the first, FP, then TOZ, then LPED, then PECFD.
I think this is the normal Snellen
F
chart. I think
C Z P, and I couldn't read past that line. And then the one next to it is goats that are just like in like
wow.
different directions. Like so, like a goat pointing up, a goat pointing down, a goat pointing to the
so
left,
funny.
an upside down goat pointing left. Like they just
Wow.
this show loves goats. Can I ask? I know we got a lot to go through here, but Amanda, talking
Yeah.
about the blood test and the IVF that's going to come up here. And yes, Gemma's alive, but she's many different women in this episode too.
Mm-hmm.
Clones completely off the table for you?
Ooh, yeah. There's, so clone discourse in the world of Severance has gone through like many cycles. Like
Yes.
people are like team clone.
We're on like the 17th Bardo of clones.
Oh my gosh, people swing over to the clones are so dumb. And then it's did you hear? Like the cast said there's no clones. And then somebody else is like, well, they would have said that anyway. And actually there are clones. So you don't really know what clones work. Well, it's fiction. So, I mean, there's a lot going on in the world of clone discourse. We live in a divided country. What can I say? So I don't think that it's clones in this episode. I think that that the show loves to dangle the clones in front of us and watch us squirm. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody. But I think that
probably guiltier than most.
Hey now. But what I think we're seeing in this episode is not Gemma as a clone, but I think we're seeing a thing that I've also kind of turned my nose up at in the past, but I don't, I think I can come around on it. I think that Gemma is existing in a multi-compartment severance type of life where each of these rooms is a different part of Gemma, where they are that self, like the Wellington self is experiencing a perpetual state of being at the dentist,
which is unbelievably awful.
Well, it seems like all of these are designed to be awful, right? They're all designed to, I don't know if it's like a testing of this severance procedure of like, okay, if something's really bad, like, does it break through? Does your loathing of thank you cards or scary flight situations or being
or
at
your
the
physical
dentist
discomfort on the other side, right? Like your hand hurts, your jaw hurts. Like how do you take that with you into the next room?
Yeah.
And I think that this has been designed specifically for Gemma. Like we hear the nurse is going to ask Gemma, what's scarier? If you're in a mudslide, are you more afraid of drowning or what's the other one?
Or
suffocating. Yeah. I think that what they've been doing is they have been honing Gemma's in particular worst fears. And if we look at the bins, that the Macrodata Refinement team is binning, if we think of the 4 tempers, according to Keir, it's woe, dread, frolic, and malice.
Yeah.
3 of those are extremely unpleasant. And one of them is good, but like, I mean, is it a manic type of good? But I think that this procedure has probably been developed for Gemma to have each room evoke a certain one of those tempers or different tempers in combination. I don't know what the outfits are so much about, but I think in each of these rooms, Gemma is experiencing a perpetual state of that self that is always in the dentist or writing thank you cards or in a plane that's about to crash.
And I think like obviously already the idea of being severed and existing only at work sounds torturous enough. Now like narrow that down further and like your innie exists only on turbulent flights. Your innie exists only at the dentist. Like your innie only exists to write letters. Like it's awful, really terrible.
But it makes sense that this would be how Lumen might want to market this, right? Like the version of you that you never have to go to the dentist again because there's a version of you that will do that. You never have to fly again if you're afraid of that because there's a version of you that will do that. Like I think that it makes so much sense that this would
We're
be kind of the
eradicating
marketing of this.
that we're killing woe, right? Like
Whoa. Yeah.
woe is out the window. Like we're just trying to make life a little more tolerable for everybody, right? I mean, this is this
Isolating those tempers to keep them in
Yeah.
balance. I don't know. Yeah.
Put them in bins. Of course, she's going to pass by a bunch of rooms that have familiar titles: Allentown, Cairns, Sienna, Wellington, which is the dentist's office. We will also watch her pass Cold Harbor at one point. These have all been at certain points names of files that MDR have been working on. I guess a question that I have for either of you is, so when is Dylan working on Wellington, or is it just are these just Mark's bins? Like so then what are Dylan and Irving and Helly, what are they doing? Or is it really just Mark's refinement? We know that there are other people watching Dylan and Irving and Helly's progress as well. So it's not just Mark who's being monitored. But
Yeah, because wasn't the Sienna file Helly's file that she was finishing? Because they're Tomb Water is one of them, which I remember being a file name. Rhodes, Drainsville, Loveland, Allentown Cares, Sienna, Wellington were the ones I all wrote down.
Yeah. So I have a theory about what MDR is doing. And I think that they always have had at least one, maybe exactly one subject on the testing floor. And then they've had refiners who are, reading the data from that individual's experience of one of these rooms and trying to classify the components of these tempers that are within it. And I think that they've been doing this for a long time, and they encountered this happy accident that Mark decided to get severed as a response to Gemma's death. And he ended up on the floor refining the tempers of his own wife. And I think that this was the first time they had found this matching of testing floor subject and refiner who had shared a pre-existing relationship. And this is why Mark did the first thing, whatever it was it Allentown? Was that the one that he did faster than anybody else? And so they discovered that it's extremely advantageous when the refiner has a connection to the person who's on the testing floor. That is my theory. And I think that it's probably always been at least one person down there, and everybody's been working on it because they go to a bunch of different rooms in a day. 6 rooms, I don't understand, because, presumably there's only 4 of the MDR workers who have been refining at a given time. So there's still things to work out with this theory.
These are, if these are refined, these are already refined bins, right? So it's maybe it's once they are refined, now you are in an optimal state to continue testing it, maybe something like that. So Allentown gets 100%ed, so now Allentown is usable on multiple occasions, something like that.
Yeah, or she could be going to rooms for files that are waiting to be refined, right? They're collecting all of the data and then going to send that, and now that's the new file or something, right? Because we haven't seen a Wellington file before, right?
And maybe Dr. Maurer, the sick F that he obviously is, just has a grand old time whenever he gets to be in a creepy room with Gemma, and he wants to keep reliving his Christmas thank you card.
Yeah, he's a sick boy. This is a sick boy, and this is also our little whistler. He's whistling that little familiar tune. So R.I.P. PD for real. And this is Dr. Maurer, who's been making giving us all a little bit of the chills throughout Severance.
I don't like him.
No, I don't like him. I don't like him at all.
And we know for sure this is the same as the Whistler, because this is also credited as Rabi Benson as the doctor on IMDb. So it's the same actor.
Yep, and it's the same exact tune. So it connects for us, especially having talked about it so much. She asks, "Can I get a break at least for a little while?" I was like, "But it's been 6 weeks." She's like, "But I was just here." She's like, "No, it's been 6 weeks." So she starts to whimper as he starts to work, and then suddenly she's out. She was in there for 2 hours. She remembers none of it. but her jaw hurts. And we are seeing we're seeing something firsthand that like we could have speculated about, and certainly have before, to the point of it not really feeling like speculation, that the birthing retreat, which gets name dropped in this episode, going through the door, you would imagine, is what severs the person who's about to give birth. So that technology exists also on the severed floor of Lumen with the fire exit, the emergency exit.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like they have had that in place, and that you can like also like locate your specific identity like in like a geolocated, like a geo-targeted way, so that only in the Wellington room is Gemma Wellington Gemma. Only in Allentown room is Gemma Allentown Gemma. So very fascinating to get to see all
Your
of that.
memories are spatially dictated. That's what Helly told us.
So there you go. We cut back to Mark. He's still asleep. A great line from Devin. "I need you back, my lady." I thought that was just really cute.
Yeah.
So we're gonna spend a lot of time now with Mark and Gemma's courtship that escalates swiftly. When we come back to the past, Mark comes up to Gemma. It is clear that either the night before was their first date or something, or it was the night. You know,
They exchanged vessels.
Wink, wink, nudge,
Yeah.
nudge. Yeah, they exchanged
Baby
vessels.
goats. Baby goats.
That baby goats were visited, and they were upside down, left, right. They were in all sorts of positions. Mark comes to Gemma with the ant farm, which we've seen, and he says, "Oh, you like ants, right?" She goes, "No, I said I love plants. I hate ants." But I love farms. And it's very cute and bantery. They've got good patter. They're both, academics. They get to grade papers together. It's soups cute. Mark's building a crib. They're clearly like talking about really expanding their world together. There is a actual dinner scene, or at least a meal shared between the four of Mark, Gemma, Devin, and Rickon, who is telling some kind of story that I didn't fully clock about him like belaying somebody.
Yeah, so they're rock climbing. And my favorite line of the whole episode is Rickon can scale walls like a gecko.
That's it.
Finding out that he's very outdoorsy.
He's very agile.
He's been rock climbing. So belaying is like when you're on the ground, right? And you're the like hook when people are climbing up with the ropes and everything.
Belay.
So
belay on.
Yeah, and Devin was having none of it, which I thought was hilarious. So yeah, I loved
really
this.
Funny. Yeah, outdoorsmanship courses through my veins is what Rickon says.
Rickon's extremely athletic. He can engage in the act of love for several hours.
Yes. Great prolific love maker, Rickon Laszlo Hale. Devin and Gemma have a moment where Devin's going to pour Gemma some booze, but Gemma refuses, and that's the code of, oh my gosh, it's happening. But it's not happening. As we then hold on Gemma and transition, again, just the transitions in this episode are so mesmerizing. And we go from this like beautiful, happy moment between sisters-in-law to Gemma alone in the bathroom, in the shower, fully clothed, and clearly has lost the pregnancy when Mark comes home.
This was so
heartbreaking. It is. And I think that, Deacon Lockman and the writing and the directing deserves a lot of credit for like creating this very full character in the course of this episode based on really nothing. Like there's nothing that we've actually seen of Gemma. Gemma is not Miss Casey. Like the performance that we've seen so far is very different. And this is, a little bit like she's beautiful, she's smart, she's a little bit, maybe you could say a little bit of a one-dimensional character, but then we see that she's gone through this tragedy and loss, that she and Mark start to struggle in their marriage, and this could almost like stand alone as as a piece in this kind of like dystopian sci-fi. You know, it could be like a short film. I thought that this really did a good job of making me not only, you know, like Gemma, but also really understand a three-dimensional person. And we've gone so far in this series with Mark as our major POV character. And this has been a journey about Mark trying to find his wife and trying to get his life back. And I was rooting for Gemma in this episode. Like, I wanted her to escape. I wanted her to get back to her life. And I think that that is a really compelling thing to be able to do in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So Mark is going to be thinking about Miss Casey and like his meetings with Miss Casey, and then we go and see that scene from last season. I assume where Miss Casey is standing over Mark's shoulder. This is before Mark and Helly are gonna go seek out baby goats, but actual baby goats and not the other thing. And so Miss Casey is there behind Mark. And then we like trip through like the cable wiring that goes from this computer down to whatever server room these, I'm gonna say it, these MDR clones are sitting around at their desks. They're not like one-to-ones, but there is like a larger guy who looks like vaguely Zach Cherry-esque. There's like an older guy who looks vaguely John Turturro-esque. There's a woman with red hair. Like there's this guy who's looking at Mark. So is that just for vibes? Is that for reasons? I don't know.
Yeah. And are they refining the data of the refiners? Is that
right? Wow.
That sort of
who refines
like
the
idea?
Yeah.
refiners?
Yeah.
I
thought it was very interesting as well.
Right? Who refines the refiners?
Who refines the refine? Yeah, Drummond is there. He's like watching over their shoulder. Yeah, this piece of it, I have to say, it's not fully clicked into place for me yet. What the other mirror image refiners are? Do they need to be the same gender and size as our MDR refiners, or is that just vibes? I don't know.
Yeah, hard to say.
And I thought it was fun that like the 4 desks are all facing outwards versus for the MDR that we know, their desks all face inwards. That felt, I don't know what the metaphor is, but
well, there's
the mirror.
Yeah,
hello, it's very hello, Ms. Cobell, goodbye, Ms. Selvig.
Yeah, I think there's like an innie outie representation even here, right? Like I think them facing outie. Dr. Maurer, I just was cracking up because I like in this very like kind of like serious big reveal of a scene of like the refiners are being watched and maybe being refined themselves by doppelgangers at the worst, right? Doppelgangers at the very least. That while all of this is happening, and I'm sure we will have a lot of theories on that. Mr. Drummond is down there and he's going to be talking to Dr. Maurer, who is not just a dentist, apparently. He has other gigs as well. And I don't know what he is doing right now, but he looks like White Goodman, Ben Stiller's character from Dodgeball. He has like the handlebar mustache. He's got like some like athleisure he's wearing.
And we saw
he's, like, going out to, like,
kind of a similar outfit on Deacon Lockman walking down the hallway at one point.
I love this idea
that chasing down Mikey Palmisi in the woods of New Jersey. Like this is like
amazing.
A mobster. Like what is he doing? This guy.
I mean, I love this idea of. I mean, this was honestly this got me a little bit more hyped into Severance because I feel like this was the vibe that I fell in love with. Like this bizarre but like somewhat recognizable version of our world where a company would sort of market this weird tech where it's like you'll never go to the dentist again, and the other side of that is that somebody lives in constant terror, and the idea that like one of these terrible experiences that we want to block out of our consciousness forever would be like gym class, right? Like, I mean, right? Like that would be one of those things.
Didn't I say that I would have my innie just work out all the time?
Go to the gym all the time. Yeah, you're the monster, Josh.
Yeah, my innie goes to Globo Gym. That's where he works out. That's where he lifts.
Can we talk a little bit about the good doctor, Dr. Maurer?
Please.
So this actor, Rabi Benson, has this like very distinct look. He has these like glass blue eyes that are incredibly striking. And I'm trying to like, he's kind of emerges very, very quickly as perhaps a new big bad. And this is a little bit like late in the game where we already have the Egan family, like we already have Helena, we have her father, we have Drummond, we have Milchick. What is this guy going to bring to the table, and how is he going to be connected to all of that? And the way he looks is so striking. And the actor who plays James Egan, I believe that's his Michael Siberry, who as a actor, as a person, I don't think he has blue eyes, but I'm sorry, I didn't watch like I feel like he had a look. There was something super reminiscent to me about the way
Egan-esque.
that there's something Egan-esque about Dr. Maurer in my sense. Like there was something about the way he looked, a kind of distantness, a kind of I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, do we think that he's going to be related to Helena and James? Do we think he's going to be part of the Egan family?
I don't
or
think
he's just
so.
another a high up Lumen guy?
I think he's a Lumen flunky, and like I would equate him to like my hope, because I think we need a few more of these, is like we need a few middle managers to beat the shit out of. Just like full stop. But certainly here in Severance, like we need a few more of these like people who are just like they like, you know better. You shouldn't be doing this.
Like Milchick is a little too sympathetic right now.
That's the thing. Is like I don't want to beat the shit out of Milchick because I love Milchick, and I want Milchick to beat the shit out of himself and see the light of day. Eventually we probably have to kick the crap out of Milchick, but not today, Satan. But this guy, you could beat the crap out of Dr. Maurer tomorrow with a stool, and I'd be thrilled. I think that this is not like a final boss. This is like a mid-level boss is what it feels like to me. And I think shows really benefit from having those like mid-season villains that like you can introduce and hype up in this like way that just like makes them feel like, oh God, I cannot wait to see this guy get their comeuppance. Like I'm thinking, Melissa, I won't spoil you on Lost season 5, but there is there is a character. There are a few characters that show up in Lost season 5, Phil, Rosinski, that they show up and they clearly exist just so that they can eventually get like karmically noogied to death. And so like,
it would be great to see Gemma noogie this guy.
I would love to see her noogie Dr. Maurer to death. And I hope that that's really it. And that like Dr. Maurer doing all of this stuff and like clearly being in this abusive position of power where he is blurring the line between this is his like sacred professional duty as like a core member of the testing floor at Lumen versus like him just like really horribly, awfully in so many of these like workplace harassment stories that you hear about is doing that. And so like that's a guy who I'd like to see fired at best.
Yeah. Like the moment there was this exchange of like, oh, you like her, she's fond of me too. Didn't she try to break your fingers? I was like, oh gosh, this guy sucks.
Yeah. That guy sucks. So let's go back to the past. When we go back to the past, we are going to start introducing IVF into the equation. At least that's what I assume this is IVF.
Yeah,
I feel like. And so Mark is telling Gemma that this is the next step for a lot of people. We're going to see him helping her out with the shots. He says a line that I thought was very sweet. There's a kid out there. We just have to reach out and grab her. Is that just a sweet thing? Or is that going to be something that is perverted by Severance where like they have found a way to get Gemma and Mark's child through science and having access to all of the things? So that
probably, right?
Yeah.
This patient intake form has a Lumen symbol in the top left corner. If you pause that, which is real creepy. The butts Lumen Fertility Center, maybe?
Yeah.
I tried to like read the name of it, but yeah.
The Seymour Butts
Mhm.
fertility
Yeah.
center.
Memorial. Yeah. Are either of you making anything of this like on a plot level of seeing the IVF and seeing that it's not working out? Is this just to heighten sort of the difficulty that existed in what was otherwise like a really loving marriage?
Yeah.
Relationships are complicated. Being alive is complicated. Is it just sort of underscoring that they had a full life filled with love, filled with highs, but also tragedy and lows? Or is this going to be some sort of shady Lumen shenanigans? I guess like Amanda, with you talking about like it's not some sort of Mark is Neo kind of thing, but like they're fitting
Yeah.
circumstances and like them giving blood and going
Right.
through IVF. Like there is an exchange of genetic information that you just can't help but
Mhm.
wonder how that comes into play.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this serves to do, both things, obviously. It like sets up some challenges in their marriage. So we get to see a little bit about how Gemma and Mark each cope with that. We already know how Mark copes with things, which is not great.
Yeah.
And it kind of sets this this groundwork that then makes her death an even greater tragedy because of all of the things that Mark didn't do or say the right way. But I also definitely think that because we have every reason to believe that Lumen is entirely involved in this fertility clinic, they did not only get genetic material from both Mark and Gemma, but they also got a lot of psychological data. Gemma had to fill out a lot of questionnaires. She had to take projective tests. So we see again, we're reminded of the card that Dylan found. This is now it's not a fighting card. It's a ego death card. It's a
So that sounds like a fight. No.
it's the Spider-Man fighting Spider-Man
Yeah.
card.
Yeah.
So this has all been like Lumen has obviously been using the apparatus of giving blood, of the fertility clinic, of who knows what else to gather a lot of information about individuals, both, biospecimens and also psychological profiles. And maybe they recognized something in Gemma that made them think that she was a really good candidate for whatever they wanted to do on the testing floor, where they want her to, read 50 pages a day, do her calisthenics, like participate in all of this. Like you probably don't want to throw just anybody down there, right? Like not everybody is going to be a good test subject. So Gemma had these qualities and was identified. We don't get to see exactly what happens on the night of her alleged death. I think that
Right.
that's still something that we could learn more about. We can start to speculate about that. But either they had said, if anything ever happens to her and we have the opportunity, we have to seize it, or they actually went out to create a circumstance in which they could fake her death and then kidnap her for this particular purpose.
Nefarious. Quite
Mhm.
nefarious. When we go down to the testing floor, she is going to be interacting with Dr. Maurer in a really harrowing scene where he's asking her to report on the 6 rooms that she had visited today. She was in a bunch of them, including St. Pierre, as in Scott, a great member of the core RHAP squad, who has celebrated a birthday this week. So happy birthday, Scott
Ooh,
St. Pierre. Everybody
birthday,
should wish him
Scott.
a happy birthday. RHAP doesn't run without Scott. So he asks her, did you exit any rooms feeling despair, fervor, gaiety? But she doesn't really want to field these questions today. She says, there's just one room I haven't been in, Cold Harbor, and it has a name now. What happens when I go there? And Dr. Maurer says, you'll see the world again, and the world will see you. And she says, I'll see Mark. And he says, Mark will benefit from the world you're siring, and Kier will take away his pain as he's taken away yours. And love to see some of this old fight clearly in Gemma as she says, can you please just talk like a normal person? He says, good night, Gemma. Dream sweet. He gets up and leaves.
Too many big words. Okay, I just had I just had a different clone theory.
Okay,
New-
great.
new-
Let's do another clone theory.
Wake up, babe. New clone theory just dropped.
Yes.
So what if after Gemma goes through all of these rooms and they've like completely fully profiled this human being, then they use Gemma's genetic material to make a clone army of Gemmas.
Whoa.
Baby Gemmas.
Baby
Clone
Gemmas.
Baby clone Gemmas. Clone army of Gemmas.
Wow.
I could buy it.
And we're just gonna populate the world with a bunch of Gemma clones.
Yeah. There's not a Gemma that is 37 years old
Right.
that's alive today, but after they know
Is
everything
there a
about
Gemma
this
that's a like a 12-year-old kid?
people don't like that, and I'm off of it now. I don't know. Maybe, but I'm not fully on that. I think what's more likely is after they've completely fully profiled this person biometrically, psychologically, and all of this testing, then they say like, okay, we have the perfect person. We know how to engineer their brain with our severance technology. And now we're making an army of this person for whatever purpose.
Or, it could also be that like they are like cloning Gemma's experiences and like the hope at least that she is going to be docile enough to behave appropriately in all of these ways so that when people across the world get their severance chip and they go into the uncomfortable situations, that the person who's in there is ostensibly supposed to be basically Gemma.
Very much like that too. I'm going to put a pin in something that I won't talk about today. We can save it for our next theory and feedback.
I hope you remember.
Discussion.
I won't. That's not how
I think I will, even though I meant to remember it another time and I forgot. But there's a concept called the digital twin. Melissa, are you aware of the digital twin that's been used in personalized medicine and other? So we'll talk about the digital twin, but I think that this is something that is very, very, very much in line with what is going on in Severance, potentially.
Interesting. So he leaves. We go back home, and it's morning time now, and Mark is still asleep, and Devin is talking to Rabi and trying to get to the bottom of what she knows about Severance. She brings up the birthing retreat. The Demona birthing retreat is what it is called.
I looked up this name.
Yes.
So Demona, according to Wikipedia, is a Gallo-Roman. In a Gallo-Roman religion, Demona was a goddess worshipped in Gaul as a consort of Apollo. And the name derives from the Proto-Celtic stem Demo, meaning bull or sheep. And the Proto-Indo-European,
sounds very goat-like.
the tamed one. So basically, also presumably reflected in the British tribal name Demonte, interpreted as meaning tamers. And there's some like ancient cults and stuff that worshipped Demona.
Tired, escape at Dannemora. Wired, escape Demona. Demona, of course, also Goliath's former love interest when they were both like medieval gargoyles before they went to the modern day and became arch rivals against each other. Wow. I think that she had a thing for Xanatos, but I can't remember if that's just me trying to put Riker and Troy back together. But neither here nor there. I don't think this is a gargoyle shout out, but would love. So they're talking about that, and then Devin's like, you know what? I'm going to call Harmony Cobell. She's out. She's not there anymore. She might be able to know something here. She gave me decent breastfeeding advice, even though it was covert and not cool. Let's maybe see if she can show up and do something here. And Rabi says, okay, cool. So if you do that, I'm out. I'll leave. I'm not going to be here. And she makes good on that. She dips, Amanda. She's out of here.
Yeah.
Rabi, what a little coward Rabi is.
What is going on with Rabi? Like I'm not
so sure I'm a Rabi fan.
No. I'm not sure. I might be out on Ragabi. Ragabi's out on Mark. That sucks. I'm not satisfied with what we've gotten in terms of understanding the character motivation of Ragabi. She's kind of just been a plot device that eats icing with a spoon.
Yes.
I
She killed a man. She killed a man in front of Mark for like interfering
Indeed.
in the clandestine meeting between her and Mark. She
Yes.
seems to have some deep interest in Mark insofar as reintegration, which appears to be some measure of like her entire personality
her
right now.
entire reason to be.
And
But
so
then she's out?
and
She's
so I'm
out this fast?
and so I guess on one level, I'm thrilled that she's just cheesing it and getting out of here. But on another level, shouldn't she just club Devin and like throw Devin down the stairs? Like, I'm not
Right,
advocating for that,
or
but
do
like,
what
it's just
she did.
inconsistent to
Yeah.
me. She's an
It's
inconsistent
totally
character.
inconsistent.
Yeah.
It's totally inconsistent. Or she could do what she did, which was convince Devin not to call Harmony Cobell and then also not leave. Like, because she won. And she's still like, you know what? This is too much of a hassle for me now.
Yeah, the leaving doesn't make sense to me because it's like, if anything, that's going to now like abandon Devin. So Devin is going to need help and is going to like is more likely
Right.
now to call Cobell
Yes.
than if she had stuck around. Like, I don't understand. Like, yeah, I didn't understand that part at all.
Inconsistent character. I don't understand what we're ultimately trying to do with Ragabi, and I feel like the more time we spend with her, the less I understand her role on the show. If this is just Ragabi dips and they decide not to do more Ragabi stuff, I'm good. Because I just don't think they've handled the character particularly well.
It'll feel a little sloppy. Yeah, it'll feel a little sloppy, and I'll be disappointed in the show for that. But yeah, it hasn't really worked at any point yet, and this was a big whiff for me.
Big whiff. Okay, ego death. Mark, as he's like slowly waking up, brings up the Chichi Bardo, which we then see Gemma and Mark talking about, and we see the cards. Look at the cards. They're fighting ego.
Yeah.
Battling their egos. And then they fight each other because clearly they're in a rough way, that the IVF has not been working. She is feeling beat to shit. And Mark says, then let's stop. And so we cut between we go from that, I think, straight to Gemma's life back on the testing floor, where she's brushing her teeth. She gets on the airplane. Dr. Bauer is just like, he's like on like a Comedy Central show, doing costume comedy. And as they're watching all of this, they're determining that Mark is closing in on Cold Harbor, but he's stuck at 96%. Also, Mr. Drummond is unimpressed with Dr. Mauer's Christmas sweater.
Yeah. And he warns them he's going to have to say goodbye to Gemma once Mark is done.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I think he has a crush on her.
Yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit.
Gross.
I think a very like a really good textural note, or at least it played that way for me, is when we go to the Christmas room. This is Allentown, I believe, right? Is the Christmas room. When we go to Allentown, Baby It's Cold Outside is what's playing, which when you examine Baby It's Cold Outside is about a dude who's not letting the woman go. So it's a really nefarious, dark song, and it is properly applied here in the scene in Allentown.
Yeah. I also
problematic bop, Baby It's Cold Outside.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think that there's like different. I know there's different interpretations.
There's a feminist defense of Baby It's Cold Outside.
I don't think Severance is listening to it.
Yeah, no, I don't think that is the intention here. Also, I paused to look at the food drawer for these like little Lumen water shaped foods. The tender cassava, flaky dinner roll, macaroni and cheese, apple blossom, rendered marrow, candied carrots, and then macerated something. But
Ooh,
yeah, so she eats these 3. First of all, this dinner is beautiful, but
it
also
is
very
beautiful.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Sounds
got to be.
delicious.
Yeah, I imagine like, some fine, like, I don't know, some fine dining place, like, some one of those places in the Bear or something, like, whatever. Like, get on this. I want these 3 Lumen drop meals, and I would eat the heck out of that marrow one.
Yeah, I'd eat them all. I think I would. Like
Mm-hmm.
what they're describing, exactly my stuff. But we don't have to live and eat that every day. That is unfortunately Gemma's reality inside of Allentown. Her existence is
Mm-hmm.
eating all of that, celebrating Christmas all day, and writing nonstop thank you letters about grouters. Sorry, degrouters.
Yeah.
My mistake.
I had a question about this because so like the writing of the thank you card is illegible and messy when we
Mm-hmm.
see it. She's got ink all over her hands. Is this meant to imply that there is something wrong with Gemma, that somehow this like fine motor deficit as a result
Oh,
of an injury from her accident? Is it just that she's written so many letters that her hand is cramping up and she can no longer
yeah,
write? Is
I
it
think
that
it's
she
that.
is
Yeah.
okay? And I noted that she was writing with her left hand, and I was like, is she actually left-handed, or she is doing this like anyway? I thought there were like potentially alternative explanations, but it could just be that she wrote a lot of letters and her hand is
Yeah,
cramping.
I mean, I think you see in the letter that you're looking at that her handwriting deteriorates, like, supposedly due to like the stress of writing over and over again. I think it's just supposed to depict how hellish it has been for her to write. However, I mean, we saw
Mhm.
what Milchick had to do with paper clips, and his
Right.
hands were starting to cramp
I was
up.
gonna say it's the
Um,
break room all over again. This
it's
repetitive
very
messaging, right?
parochial school. Like, it's very like the, Bart Simpson on the
Yep.
blackboard
Yep.
writing over and over again. It's
Yeah.
very old school discipline.
Yeah. Um, we're gonna then go from Allentown to intercutting between the testing floor and what's going on the final night of Mark and Gemma's life together. So she's gonna be on the testing floor. She's going to be thinking about, it seems like she's kind of thinking about her Christmas with Mark once upon a time. Um,
Yeah.
she,
Seems like a
she's eating,
sad Christmas.
yeah, she's eating a little slice of pie. The pie did look good. It kind of looked like a little key lime-ish.
Mhm.
And Dr. Maurer comes in and basically tries to poo-poo any thoughts and hopes about returning to her life with Mark. She says, your husband remarried last year. He has a daughter now. You've been gone a long time. He's moved on. Maybe you've moved on in one of the rooms. Do you feel yourself gravitating towards one room or the other? Feeling things you haven't felt with? Bonk. Clocked with a chair by Gemma.
Get him, Gemma. Get
Yeah.
him.
This was great. Yeah. So yeah, in the reflected Christmas, we see Mark taking apart the crib. Clearly, some of that dashed hope that they had, which is very sad. And I thought it was very interesting that yeah, clearly Christmas for Gemma is maybe associated with these sad feelings. But yeah, Maurer being absolutely the creepiest jerk ever. And I was like, so here for Gemma fighting back and like not, because that was the one thing that I was sort of struggling to understand at this point, and I still sort of am, is like why Gemma is going along with all of this, right?
Yeah.
Why isn't she trying to leave? Why is she putting herself through this very confined life, right? And so I still don't totally understand why we're not getting more fight back from her, why like later Milchick in the hallway is sort of enough to just like send her back. But
Well,
I'll
at
be
that
interested
point,
to kind
it's
of,
because
yeah.
she's turned into Miss Casey again, right? Is what I
Yeah,
interpreted it
Right.
yeah.
as.
When
No,
she, like,
totally,
I mean,
totally.
that
Yeah.
that was like a real emotional roller coaster for me, because I was
Yeah.
rooting for Gemma so hard, and she
Yeah.
clocks this guy in the head, and I'm like, yes, we're doing this. You go, girl. And she's running through the halls. She gets out, and then I'm like, oh shit. She's
Well,
just gonna turn into Miss Casey when she gets
Yeah.
up. And it's
and
effectively like another one of these rooms where
yes,
she dresses up and she's like a doll and she's in this very naive state. And it's, you wonder how many times this might have happened before where
totally.
she's gotten to this place. Like, we know about how Helly fought to escape. But she's it's completely futile. They found this complete full safe way to enslave her unless you get in and do some like OTC with that
Right.
shit. But it was really heartbreaking when I realized that this is going to happen to her. And even if it's happened to her before, she doesn't know.
Correct.
Yeah.
And also like any as like the information that Mark and the rest of, you know, Helly and Dylan, even any information they possess about the Gemma situation, it's so limited. They like the information they possess is Gemma and Miss Casey are the same person. Miss Casey is your Outie's wife. That's what they know. They don't know where she is. They don't know how to get to her. But I feel like it seems to us liberating her is going to require removing her from the testing floor, but removing her from the testing floor turns her into Miss Casey. So is Gemma just trapped? Can Gemma come back? At least not without, like you're saying, some like direct intervention, probably. Like you would imagine they've got the buttons and levers with which to make that switch happen, but why they would make that happen and how Mark and anyone else would find the way to do that. The fact that she comes up after this escape attempt and turns into Miss Casey suddenly makes the let's get Gemma the hell out of here hope a lot more complicated, which is great narratively, horrible for these two people who we love because we see them on their final night together too. She says she's going out. I'll be back at 10. He's grading papers. I love you. He doesn't respond immediately because he's distracted. It's that at least he gets to say it back. But it is like that kind of thing that I am sure he relitigates in his mind of like, I wasn't even attentive on that final night.
I mean, the thing that I thought was really effective about this episode, even though I agree, Josh, from a mechanic standpoint, it's hard to imagine how Gemma can be free and she and Mark can be together again. From a standpoint of what you're rooting for as a viewer, I think that the show had painted itself into a real corner where this is a story about a man trying to find his dead wife, and then he falls in love with this very compelling, likable character that we also have fallen in love with as an audience. But this episode made me want Mark and Gemma to get together again, which I think like makes it a little bit neater in terms of what the story could end up being.
Yeah. So she leaves. She gets kicked back down to the testing floor by Mr. Milchick. Mark is finishing grading papers. Police show up. That just that look at Mark on the other side of the door as like the shadow is cascading down upon him, as like his life is just blacking out, as the moment that's going to change him forever is on its way towards knocking on his door. And meanwhile, Gemma is back down on the testing floor, realizing that she was not able to escape for whatever reason. And she slinks down, calling out for Mark as the nurse lifts her up and brings her back. The final scene of the episode, Mark finally waking up on his couch, Devin asking him, "Where did you go?" and him having a couple of final flashes of Gemma. So you ever want to see what it was like when Mark and Gemma were together? We got that for better and for sadder in this episode. A real emotional roller coaster, this one.
Thought it was so good. I really loved it.
So I'm sure you all have a lot to say about this one as well. We'd love to hear from you. Severance, RHAP at gmail.com. That is our hotline. Severance, RHAP at gmail.com. If you want to send in any theories or feedback about this episode as we continue picking it apart here in the days after Severance Season 2, Episode 7's release. We will be back in short order with not only that show, but in a few more days, in just a week, an Episode 8 recap.
Wow.
As there's 3 episodes left.
Lion
Next week.
Yeah.
Next week, the anti-penultimate episode.
Oh,
and Gemma
yes.
doesn't even like antis.
Oh
So-
no, the planty penultimate episode.
This was the planty penultimate. Next week's the anti-penultimate. So make sure you're subscribed. You'll never miss an episode. WeKnowSeverance.com, RHAP, We Know Severance, wherever you get your podcasts. Look it up, hit subscribe, tell a friend. You can follow us all on the internets. I'm at Round Howard. Melissa, where are you?
Melissa Woodward 28, Whirlwind Pods, all the usual.
And Amanda.
At Dr. Amanda R on Blue Sky and at Cry Laugh Pod.
All right. Well, this episode made me cry, laugh. Very, very much living up to the title of your pod, and also was a whirlwind, Melissa.
It was.
It really all syncs up quite nicely together. We'll be back in a couple of days talking theories, taking feedback here on the Severance podcast on RHAP. Until next time, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.